Good morning and welcome to this week's video worship. I'm glad you're able to tune in. As a reminder, we hope to have in-person worship in our parking lot throughout the next few weeks and into the fall. If it's a rainy day, we will not have outdoor worship or any in-person worship, so you'll just have to go home and watch it on YouTube or Facebook. But I'm glad you're able to click on and check in and to worship together today. It is a wonderful thing that we have been able to do virtual worship and that we've been able to connect in this way. As a reminder, if you have prayer concerns, you can call me or call the church office and we'll pass those around. If you need me as the pastor, feel free to call me any day and check in with me. I'll be happy to help you out or figure out what we can do in a situation. On our announcements, we have a blood donation time coming up August 25th. That's not this Tuesday, but the next Tuesday. And I know it's a hassle, but we're asking that you call in. They are very friendly and they will easily get you scheduled, but we're asking that you do call in and get scheduled so that we can manage people coming and going from our building. We have special music today from the Shaw family, and we're very thankful for that. Prayers for Grace Ann as she heads off to college in the next week or so, and prayers for all our young adults as they head off to school or head out into the workforce after finishing college. What an uncertain time for our young people as they go back to school or back to college or go off to the next adventure of life. And so we really do pray for our young people in these next few weeks as they go into those transitions. Some weeks as I do my announcements and I do my sermon, you hear my neighbors in the background. My neighbors are Dominican from the Dominican Republic, and they love to get together on the weekends, and especially on nice hot days, they sit out in the backyard and just visit and laugh as a large extended family. And some weeks, Pastor Doug gets annoyed with them. After all, I'm doing my sermon, I'm working here, and they're making all the noise and carrying on. And some weeks, I get annoyed with myself. After all, they're just being family and enjoying the blessings that God has given them. Who am I to get all worked up about them having a good time? Well, that reminds me of our sermon today. Today we're going to be talking about family time, and we'll realize that being together as the family of God is complicated and difficult sometimes. This morning we continue our series from the book of Genesis, and we think about family time. And in the back behind me on my mantle this week, I've got some pictures of my kids and some of their growing up pictures, and it's a reminder to me of family time and the blessings of being together as God's people. Well, now let us worship through the music of the prelude. Let us be called to a spirit of worship through our call to worship. I invite you to join with me in the words that will appear on your screen. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before God with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is God who made us, and we are God's people. We are the sheep of God's pasture. Give thanks to God and praise the name of the Lord, for the Lord is good, and God's love endures forever. God's faithfulness continues through all generations. Let us pray. Lord God, most holy and wonderful, we rejoice that you have given us a day in which to worship you, that you have given us this time that we might gather in spirit and worship. We rejoice for the opportunity to offer our thanks and praise to you, our God. We rejoice as we count our blessings and as we sing your praise. Thank you, Lord, for it is in love that you created us. It is out of your grace that you have redeemed us, and it is by your Spirit that you empower us for each day. Thank you. Lord God, as we gather for worship, we take our eyes off of the world. We take our eyes off of our situation, and we turn our eyes to the narrow view of your kingdom. Lord, turn our eyes from all the distractions and all the worries. Turn our eyes and our hearts away from the things of our own lives to your kingdom and your presence with us. Turn our eyes to Jesus. Jesus, who was full of joy, so the children wanted to come and be with him. Jesus, who was so full of courage and grace that he could turn the other cheek. Jesus, who was so full of your presence that he confronted the dark powers of this world, sickness and domination and self-righteousness and hatred. Jesus, who was so full of your love that he forgave and that he still forgives. Thank you, God, for this day as we worship you. May we breathe deeply of your Spirit. May we be filled with your light. May we learn ever more to walk in your way, the way of Jesus, in whose presence we live and in whose name we pray. Amen.
Now is the time to worship. Come, now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to worship. Come, just as you are before your God. Come. One day every tongue will confess you are God. One day every knee will bow. Still the greatest treasure remains for those who gladly choose you now. Come, now is the time to worship. Come, now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to worship. Come, just as you are before your God. Come. One day every tongue will confess you are God. One day every knee will bow. Still the greatest treasure remains for those who gladly choose you now. Come, now is the time to worship. Come, now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to
reading today continues our readings in the book of Genesis. Now we're at chapter 45, beginning at verse 1, verses 1 to 15, and I'll be reading from the New International Version. Listen for the word of the Lord. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him, because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing or reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you and your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt, and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly." Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all of his brothers and wept over them. Afterwards, his brothers talked with him. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. For the last few weeks, we have been walking with God's family through the book of Genesis. And this is our last Sunday for this journey with God's ancient people. Next Sunday, we'll be on to an interesting character sermon, different things down the road. So this week is our last in this whole series of adventures. We had Abraham, the father. And we talked about the promise that God made to Abraham, how God promised to bless him with land and children. And the third part of the promise was both a promise and an obligation, that God would make him a blessing to the world, that he would be a blessing to others. We talked about Abraham's struggles, his sons and their differences, his family troubles, and we talked about Isaac and Isaac's children, Jacob and Esau. How they were as different as night and day, how they fell apart with each other. And that week we talked about the long history of injustices and brokenness in our human history, about all the people who have a right to be angry at stolen birthrights and broken promises, and how hard it is to reconcile and bring God's people back together. But Jacob and Esau did eventually reconcile, and Jacob also managed to grow up quite a bit after he wandered off and bumped into God. And we remember that God is with us, even when we are not paying attention, even when we've given up on God, even when we don't have time for God in our lives. God is still with us, still doing things around us and with us in our lives. And God brought Jacob back home and back to his family, and Jacob started his own family and had a huge family, 12 sons. And last week we talked about his sons, and they did not get along. In fact, the youngest, the special boy, Joseph, was so disliked that his brothers threw him down a well and then sold him into slavery. That's a pretty dysfunctional family right there. This morning we're going to think about God's dysfunctional family, and about how God is working to bring us back together in family time. We think about the family time of Jacob's family and the family time that we long for and hope for someday as God's family. Well, we skipped over a number of adventures with Joseph, so let me bring you up to speed. As we ended last week, we pictured in our mind that Joseph was being led away, his hands bound, maybe his mouth gagged, leading behind a caravan of camels as they headed off into the distance for Egypt. His brothers counted their coins and patted themselves on the back. They were, at least at that moment, feeling pretty good about themselves and pretty happy that not only did they get rid of that troublesome boy, but they got paid for it. Well, after that, Joseph was blessed to be placed in the home of Potiphar, an official in Pharaoh's administration in Egypt. And Potiphar found Joseph to be a good and capable servant. In fact, he was so good and so capable that Potiphar entrusted everything to Joseph, and he didn't worry about anything at all. And the only worry that Joseph had was Potiphar's wife, who was bored and being neglected, and she was greatly interested in Joseph and a little bit of his time and some of his attention. And when he didn't return her affections, she had him accused and thrown off into prison. I mean, can this boy not get a break? Now, once again, he is in captivity for nothing of his own doing. But in prison, the warden also recognizes Joseph as a good and capable servant. And the warden rewards him with responsibilities, and soon Joseph is in charge of the prison, and the warden doesn't have to worry about anything at all. Joseph is so good and so capable. And throughout the story, we are told that the Lord is with Joseph, the Lord is with Joseph. I mean, even though he has been sold into slavery, even though he has been falsely accused and imprisoned, the Lord is with him and blesses him. And more importantly, Joseph realizes that his blessings are from the Lord, and he is humbled by that. And even with his skills, he acknowledges that they come from the Lord. And one of his interesting skills is that he has learned how to interpret dreams. He gets some practice on that while he's in the prison, and soon enough he finds that he is standing before Pharaoh, the great Pharaoh, God of Egypt, ruler of the people, and Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream. There will be a season of abundance and a season of famine. So best now to prepare. And the Pharaoh is so impressed by Joseph's interpretation and his skill and his humility that he puts him in charge of everything. Joseph will be in charge of this new program, the new tax and food storage program to sustain Egypt for a time of famine. And soon enough, Joseph, just like before, is in charge of everything. In fact, now at age 30, he's been given a wife and a place and respect and responsibility. He is the picture of success. And he has been a blessing to the whole land of Egypt, in fact, to the whole region. For soon enough, his brothers come down, looking to buy food. Now, what an interesting pickle that is. His brothers don't recognize him because, of course, Joseph is dead or gone or sold or somewhere else, but certainly not standing before them in the court of Pharaoh. But Joseph does recognize them. And then we have a whole series of little vignettes, little stories about Joseph's interaction with his brothers. And they come down and he has time to speak with them, and he is using an interpreter so they don't realize that he understands them and they are speaking freely. And he asks about their family, and yes, they have a father and he is alive, and they have another brother and he is at home. And he wants to see that other brother, Benjamin. It's his little brother, his full brother. In fact, what's maybe even more important is this is the brother who has had nothing to do with Joseph being sold into slavery. So Joseph accuses them of being spies, locks one of them up, sends them home, and says, "You don't get your brother back until I see that you're telling me the truth, and I see this brother Benjamin." Well, back home, Dad, Jacob, doesn't want to let any more of his kids go. He's lost 2 sons now, Joseph to lions or tigers or bears or wolves, and Simeon to the cruelty of someone in Egypt. But eventually the famine gets to be too much. And Joseph sends his sons, his remaining sons, including Benjamin, back down to Egypt. And Joseph looks upon them, and there's a series of interactions, and they go off home again, but Joseph has stashed some stolen goods in with Benjamin's things. And he accuses them of stealing from him and is going to imprison the one, Benjamin, who is found with them. But the other brothers break down. They can't go home without Benjamin. It would break their father's heart. They can't go home without Benjamin. They had sworn on their life to bring him home. They can't go home without Benjamin. They can't lose any more brothers. Well, my goodness. Well, that brings us up to this point in where our story begins for today. And Joseph breaks down, and he sends away all of his other officials and helpers, doesn't want them to see him falling apart in front of his family. And he visits with his family now and tells them who he is. And this is an odd series of events. This great Joseph speaking to his brothers like this. And it's hard to say why he treated them kind of like a yo-yo, sending them back and forth, and why he didn't just confront them at the very beginning. Perhaps he was trying to get time with some of the brothers without the others. I mean, after all, he couldn't really like them all. I mean, some of them really sold him into slavery, while others were not quite so guilty. Perhaps he was trying to test out their integrity, to see if they had any character in them, to see if they had changed at all. Perhaps he was playing with them, trying to break them, or trying to just play sport with them. After all, they did put him through a terrible ordeal. And perhaps Joseph was just conflicted. Perhaps he brings them close and sends them back, and brings them close and sends them back because he just doesn't know what he wants. Doesn't know how he's supposed to feel, doesn't know how he's supposed to respond to this situation. I mean, oftentimes we look at the characters in the Bible and we think that they've got it all together and that they are somehow divinely inspired or divinely imbued with wisdom and guidance and understanding. I mean, sometimes we look at the characters in the Bible and we think that the stuff that happens to them is just absolutely God's clear plan and there was never any doubt or any confusion. But if the Bible is God's story of God interacting with his people, and if God interacts with us as his people, then maybe at least some of the Bible characters were clueless. Some just trying to survive, some didn't realize that God was guiding their path until they looked back and realized it. Some, maybe even at the end, weren't sure what God did or didn't do. And here with Joseph, perhaps he is just conflicted. Unsure about how he feels about his brothers, unsure about whether he should kill them or love them, whether he should forgive them or send them away. And so we have a whole series of little stories about them coming and going and coming and going. And it seems overly complicated to us as readers, but in the midst of Joseph's emotional upheaval, perhaps it was just something like this. Well, here they are now in front of him. And throughout the story, there has been quite a lot of hand-wringing. That is, that his brothers have assumed that all this up and down and back and forth and good and bad was their fault. They had assumed that all of the bad things that had happened to them, being found with stolen goods or having to go down and ask for food, that all of it was because they had done bad, because they had sold their brother into slavery. Oh, I know. I think sometimes we are wired to think that. We think that we deserve what we get. We think that we must have done something to deserve the problems we have in life. Sometimes I've been with folks and they've asked me quite honestly, what did I do that God has done this to me? What did I do that God has done this thing or God has caused me this trouble? But I don't think God singles us out for particularly bad judgment or bad situations like that in this life. I don't think the situations that befall us are God's particular judgment on us for our particularly bad deeds. And sometimes I've seen people as a pastor who decide that they're in trouble or they need help or they have problems or they have some issue, but it's their fault. And so they don't go looking for help, they don't go seeking help because they assume that the doctor or counselor or pastor or friend is just going to point to them and say, well, see, you're a mess, you're a jerk. And they don't want to share all that. They don't want to talk about all that. They don't want everybody to know that they drink too much or do things they shouldn't do, or they did something they shouldn't have done, or they thought things they shouldn't think. And some folks just blame themselves for their situation, while Joseph's brothers blame themselves for this situation. And as they stand before him, they must have imagined all the terrible things that might befall them. You can kind of imagine some of the conversations they might have had in their heads. Some of them might have been thinking, well, it wasn't my decision. I was ready to let him go. It was his decision or their decision. I just went along with the rest of them. Some of them may be thinking, well, that's it. He's going to throw us in prison and toss away the key. We might as well just put our heads on the chopping block now. Others might have been thinking more that they should point out that at least Reuben went back and tried to save him. At least spare Reuben. Spare Benjamin. He wasn't even there. Some of them may have been oppositional or antagonistic. Maybe they were just that kind of person. And they're thinking, well, fine, Joseph. You were a jerk back then. You're a jerk now. You did what you wanted back then. You'll do what you want now. And maybe some of them were just stunned that everything has turned out okay for Joseph. But then again, that's just like Joseph, isn't it? I mean, back then he was Dad's favorite and he got everything he wanted, and now he's Pharaoh's favorite and he gets everything he wants. I mean, just like Joseph. I mean, he could fall in a pile of camel dung and come out discovering oil and owning Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's just like Joseph, isn't it? Fine, Joseph. Be like that. We can hardly imagine all the possibilities of the conversations going on in their heads as the brothers stand before Joseph, but what they could not have possibly realized was that it was Joseph orchestrating many of the things that had gone on recently in their lives, and that Joseph held them in their hand, and that he was going to be gracious, and that he was going to be loving. We have this little speech of Joseph here, and it is just a wonderful speech. I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing or reaping, but God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh and lord of his entire household and ruler of all of Egypt. Well, there have been lots of sermons and lots of writing on that passage, and particularly that line that says that God sent me ahead of you, and that it was not you who sent me here, but God. Lots of theology in there, and lots of conversations we could have about that, but I think for me, it's important to see this as a personal statement before I think about it theologically. That it's important not to kind of generalize this and say, well, God does sell people into slavery and they should just be happy for their lot. Or that God does give bad things to good people, but there's always a silver lining, or some such generalization like that. I don't think that's good theology. But it is interesting to think of this as a personal conclusion. That Joseph has gotten to a place where he can see that God has been involved in his life. That Joseph has not only attained things, but he has been humbled along the way. And he realizes that God has indeed blessed him, and God has indeed been with him, and the Lord has given him skills and opportunities, and he is okay, and he is grateful. And he is able to see through the struggles of his life the hand and presence of God. Now, I think it's important to realize that that's Joseph's conclusion, not that of his brothers. And it's important to realize that he forgives them. They don't demand that he forgive them. And I think oftentimes we, in a comfortable place of life, would like to give the speech to other people, like Joseph's brothers. it is uncomfortable being with folks who have been cheated or wronged, or folks who are angry and upset. It's uncomfortable to be with them, and so we'd like to give them the sit down and shut up speech. When we tell folks that they should be grateful for what they have and stop asking for more and stop insisting on their rights or stop insisting to get what we have. This past Friday was a special marker on the calendar for African American women. It marked the day in 2020 that they caught up with white men's earnings from 2019. That is, that African American women had to work until August 14th before they made enough money starting in January of 2019 to match the salary of the average white man. And the average woman hit that marker somewhere around mid-March this year, where they caught up in salary to white men. And it is easy for us to hear those kinds of things and say, well, they should be grateful to have a job. And of course, there are reasons why the salaries are different. There are reasons why white men are paid more than African American women. I mean, let's not simplify things. And it is easy when we hear about the burdens of others to dismiss them. My daughter Catherine, the social worker, was telling me about some of her residents in her senior living facility who are still waiting on unemployment or still missing Social Security checks. But hey, they should be grateful for what they have, and everybody should have their own emergency nest egg, and really we shouldn't count on the government to step in and bail us out or to keep us going when the economy falls apart. I mean, really, we should be taking care of ourselves. That's the sit down and shut up speech that I like to give. Because I'm a comfortable white man and I'm wealthy enough that I have an emergency fund and all those kinds of things. And it's important to realize that it's Joseph who gives this loving and gracious speech and not his brothers. For they realize that they're in the wrong. And they realize that they are in his mercy. Maybe some of them are saying that it's not entirely their fault. But the best part of this story for me is not the line about God sent Joseph to Egypt, but it's the line at the end of the story. Afterwards, his brothers talked with him. After revelations and confessions, after anger and grace, after being sold into slavery, after being imprisoned, after being on your knees, desperate for your life, they talked with one another. Afterwards, there was family time. That really gives me such hope, because I realize how challenging it is to imagine God's big dysfunctional family getting along. And I long for the day when we're all in heaven, gathered around the Father's table. And I realize that that is going to be, well, not exactly like I had once imagined it. I mean, I had once imagined heaven as a perpetually joyful place where nameless strangers would sing hallelujah songs before the throne, myriads and myriads joining in harmonious voice together. And I had imagined heaven as a place where I gather with family and friends that I have not seen in a long time. But now, as I have thought through the stories of Genesis and I think about the complexities of God's family, it occurs to me that I may be sitting around God's table with some folks that I don't know so well. Maybe I'll be sitting there at the great banqueting table next to a Democrat or a Bernie Sanders fan. Maybe I'll be sitting there next to a child from India or a person who grew up in a Muslim family. or someone who tried to come across the border into America. And there are no doubt going to be some awkward conversations in heaven if we really know as we are known. If we are really able to connect with one another, then surely there are going to be some tears as we as brothers and sisters come together. And I realize that they've had burdens and problems that I have not. And I may be tempted to say, oh yes, but I had some really hard times. I had to stay up at night and work on my schoolwork sometimes. But when we know as we are fully known, perhaps we will put all of that aside and really just talk and have good family times in a way that we have not yet done in this world. And so this story of Joseph and his brothers reconciling gives me hope that even the most dysfunctional of God's family will someday be able to reconcile and be together. And that perhaps more and more here on earth we might try. We might try to have conversations and try to have understanding, that we might try with some humility to listen and understand and encourage and strengthen each other. And that we might joyfully have family times as God's family. Amen. There are a number of new prayer concerns added to our prayer list on our worship notes, and I encourage you to look over those and to lift up those folks in prayer this week. Also in our prayers, as I mentioned in the announcements, we keep all of our young people in prayer, and the teachers in our community and the teachers in our universities as we begin this uncertain school year. We're praying for parents as they worry about getting back to routine in the fall and try to navigate childcare and work issues. Really, we have so many struggles for our families with young children. For some of us, this pandemic has been an inconvenience or a disruption, but really a pretty minor one. We have our lives and we're pretty settled and pretty comfortable with a normal routine. But for some, this has really been a life-changing event, and so we particularly lift up those with young children and families and college students going back to school this fall. Let us turn to God in prayer. Lord God, you are the creator of heaven and earth, and by your Son Jesus, you have broken down the walls that divide people. We are no longer slave and free, We are not rich or poor. We are not black or white. We are not Americans or foreigners. We are your people. And we give thanks for the reconciling unity that comes from your Spirit. Yet we are aware that in our broken world, so many divisions still exist, Lord. I am white and rich. And it is summertime, and even during a pandemic, the living is easy for me. And I cannot fix all the problems of the world. I cannot heal all the hurts or bridge all the gaps. I cannot level the playing field or carry all the burdens. And I am tempted, Lord, to close the door of my life and turn off the news and ignore the brokenness of the world. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. I cannot stop your love or limit your grace, and I do not need to fix everything. But I cannot hide from everyone or avoid every uncomfortable place. We are better together, better living as your whole family. And so, Lord, give me a heart full of patience and persistence and compassion and understanding. Help me to engage those not only who are like me, but those who are different, not in confrontation or battle, but seeking to bridge and understand. Lord God, may your Spirit be with all of us as we seek to live out your family presence with us. So I pray, Lord, for brothers and sisters. I pray, Lord, for those close to me and those far away. I pray for those who are just like me, who look like me and think like me. And I pray for those who are uncomfortably different, whose lives are challenging to me, whose demands seem unfair to me, whose lifestyle seems unfit. Lord, teach me to talk and to listen to those who are different. Teach me to look for and care for those who can offer me nothing in return, those least and lost among us, the poor and the elderly and the stranger. Lord, help me to find opportunities to engage, to share, to be family together. And Lord, I long for the day when we will all gather in your presence, in your house. And I long for the day when we will know fully, even as we are fully known. When we will weep together and rejoice together and belong together completely. Lord, you have created us in such rich variety. It is both a wonder and frustration for us, for we do not fully understand or appreciate one another. So, Lord, give us patience for those who press our buttons, and give us perseverance for those who don't click with us, and give us compassion and humility for all. For we ask this in the name of Jesus, who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And now as we go out into the world, may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all, now and evermore. Amen. The peace of Christ be with you.